It's 4 in the morning in the Central Valley, and somewhere on Highway 99, a flatbed truck is carrying 40 million bees. The driver can't hear them over the engine, but they're in there, stacked in wooden boxes 8 high, wrapped in mesh, vibrating at a frequency that would stop most people cold. And this truck isn't alone. Right now, in January and February, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 trucks just like it are converging on a single strip of California farmland the size of Connecticut. Why? Because almond trees can't pollinate themselves. Not one blossom. Without bees, there are no almonds. And California grows roughly 3/4 of the world's supply. Every bag of almonds you've ever bought, every carton of almond milk in your fridge, every Toblerone, it all traces back to 6 weeks in one valley, and a livestock migration most people have never heard of. This is Hungry Empire. The almond industry didn't always look like this. For most of the 20th century, California's almond orchards were modest operations, a few thousand acres scattered across the valley, served by local honeybee populations that farmers kept themselves or borrowed from neighbors. By 1980, the state was producing around 100 million pounds of almonds a year. Significant, but manageable. Then something shifted. American consumers started buying almonds like never before. Health messaging in the late 1980s and 1990s pushed nuts as heart-healthy alternatives to snack foods. Almond milk emerged as a dairy alternative and took off after 2010. The global export market, especially China, India, and the EU, opened wide. By 2022, California was producing roughly 2.6 billion pounds of almonds annually, a 20-fold increase in 4 decades. And every single pound of that crop required a bee. The solution wasn't more local bees. It was a continental-scale logistics network that nobody planned and almost nobody sees. The numbers tell the story. There are roughly 2.6 to 2.7 million managed honeybee colonies in the United States. During California's almond bloom, which runs from mid-February to mid-March, growers need somewhere between 1.4 and 1.6 million of them. Well over half of the managed honeybee colonies in the country, packed into one region for one crop over roughly 6 weeks. Beekeepers from Florida drive their hives 3,000 miles west. Operations from the Dakotas load trucks through January nights. Bees don't fly in the cold, which is the only safe time to move them. Texas operations, Oregon outfits, beekeepers from as far as Maine all make the same calculation. California almond growers will pay around $200 per colony for the bloom. If you run 2,000 colonies, that's $400,000 in 6 weeks. The math works. The logistics are brutal. A single semi-trailer carries between 400 and 500 hives. Drivers move at night to keep the bees calm and cool. They pull into orchards before dawn, offload the stacks with forklifts, and leave before the sun rises enough to stir the colonies. The bees wake up in a California almond orchard, surrounded by pink and white blossoms, with no idea they were in South Dakota last week. Put yourself in a beekeeper's position for a second. You've spent the winter feeding your colonies, monitoring their health, keeping them alive through sub-zero nights. Then you load them onto a truck, hand them to a stranger with an orchard contract, and drive away. For 6 weeks, your entire livelihood sits in someone else's field, exposed to whatever pesticides, pathogens, and weather that valley throws at it. The rental price has climbed steeply. In 2005, a colony rented for around $55 during the almond bloom. By 2015, it was around $150. Today, it's closer to $200 to $220 per hive. That increase reflects one thing above all. Demand is outrunning supply. And here is where the story gets harder. Commercial beekeeping in the United States has been losing colonies at rates that would destroy any other livestock industry. Annual losses have averaged around 30 to 40% per year since 2006, according to the Bee-Informed Partnership's annual surveys. Some years have been worse. In the 2022-2023 survey period, beekeepers reported losing 48% of their colonies, nearly half, in 1 year. The causes are layered and interacting. The Varroa destructor mite, a parasite that attaches to bees and feeds on their fat bodies while transmitting viral diseases, is the primary driver. It arrived in the United States in the late 1980s and has never left. Managing Varroa requires chemical treatments, rotation of miticides to prevent resistance, and constant monitoring. A colony that isn't treated correctly can collapse within months. The strange part? The almond bloom itself may be making the problem worse. When you concentrate 1.5 million colonies in a single region for 6 weeks, you create conditions that don't exist anywhere else in nature. Hives are stacked close together. Bees from one colony drift into neighboring colonies, carrying pathogens with them. Varroa spreads. Viruses spread. Pesticide exposure from the orchards and neighboring crops compounds the stress. This system is simultaneously the most impressive feat of agricultural logistics in the world and one of the most concentrated sources of risk to the very resource it depends on. The almond industry needs healthy bees. The almond bloom, at this scale, stresses bees. That tension doesn't resolve neatly. After the bloom ends, when the petals fall in mid-March, the same trucks return. Beekeepers load their colonies back up. Some hives that went in strong come out weakened. Some don't come back at all. Colony losses specifically tied to the almond bloom are difficult to isolate from annual mortality data. But beekeepers consistently report that post-almond colonies need intensive recovery time before they're ready for the next pollination contract. And there is always a next contract. After almonds, many of these colonies move to cherries in Washington, then blueberries in the Pacific Northwest or the East Coast, then apples, then clover, then sunflowers. A top-performing commercial operation might move its hives 8 to 10 times per year, chasing bloom windows across the continent. This is the hidden infrastructure of American agriculture. A permanent, semi-invisible migration that touches nearly every fruit and many vegetables that Americans eat. Here's a take that will probably get us some pushback. The economics of commercial pollination are quietly unsustainable, and the almond industry's growth has been built on a resource, healthy honeybee populations, that no single entity is responsible for maintaining. Growers pay per colony per bloom. Beekeepers absorb the mortality costs. The price of almonds doesn't fully reflect the cost of the bee losses that producing them requires. Whether that's a market failure or just how agricultural supply chains work is a question worth sitting with. Of every dollar you pay for a bag of almonds, the grower typically sees around 25 to 35 cents after input costs. The beekeeper renting colonies might see 3 to 5 cents of that dollar's worth of value represented in their pollination fee. The retailer and the brands handling packaging, logistics, and marketing take roughly 40 to 50 cents. The beekeeper carries the mortality risk. The retailer doesn't. A detail that stuck with me while researching this: the U.S. almond crop was valued at several $1 billion in 2022. The entire U.S. commercial beekeeping industry, the operation that makes that crop possible, is estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars. By some estimates, the thing the almonds depend on is worth only a small fraction of what the almonds themselves generate. Would you build a supply chain this way on purpose? Comment yes or no, because agricultural economists genuinely disagree on whether this is a crisis in formation or a market that will eventually correct itself through higher pollination prices and beekeeper consolidation. The system has no obvious redundancy. There is no backup plan for California almonds if commercial bee populations decline sharply. Robotic pollination technology exists in early experimental forms, but nothing close to deployment at scale. Hand pollination, used for some specialty crops, would be economically impossible for almond acreage measured in the hundreds of thousands. The pink and white blossoms that cover the Central Valley every February are one of the most spectacular agricultural sights in the world. Visitors drive out from Sacramento and Fresno to photograph the rows stretching to the horizon, the haze of pollen, the sound, and it is a sound, of tens of billions of bees working a valley all at once. Most of them have no idea that the scene they're photographing depends on a fleet of semi-trucks that spent the previous month driving through the night from 30 states away, or that the beekeepers who made it possible are running businesses with 40% annual losses and hoping next year's colony survival is better than last year's. Every food system has a hidden layer. This one is alive, it's fragile, and it moves at 65 miles an hour down a dark highway at 3 a.m. Look at the food around you. The systems behind them are stranger and more precarious than the labels suggest. If there's one everyday ingredient you've always wondered about, the thing on your shelf that seems too cheap, too convenient, too perfect, tell us in the comments. That's where our next story comes from. Follow Hungry Empire, and we'll show you what's actually behind it.